For 52 years of marriage, the woman I loved lived behind a door she kept locked, even from me. Hello, friends. My name is Jackson. I'm 74 years old, and the story I'm about to share with you isn't just a memory, it's the quiet earthquake that reshaped my entire understanding of love, devotion, and the secrets we cradle out of fear. If you've ever loved someone deeply, or ever hidden a part of yourself thinking it was too ugly to be seen, then this story is for you. I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Drop a hello in the comments and tell me your city. My entire adult life, I worked with sound. For decades, my world was the warm hum of vacuum tubes, the smooth surface of vinyl records, and my voice traveling out through the static into the homes of Augusta, Georgia. I was a radio man. I played the blues, soul, the kind of music that speaks of heartache and joy without needing a single picture. I thought I understood the power of what goes unseen, of what's felt rather than shown, but I was only scratching the surface. It was at a church social in the spring of '65 that I first saw Eleanor. The air was thick with the smell of fried chicken and gardenia perfume, buzzing with the chatter of young folks. And there she was, standing apart near the punch bowl, like a still point in a turning world. She was 19, with eyes the color of a twilight sky and a smile that seemed hesitant, as if unsure it was welcome. While other girls spun on the dance floor in bright, fluttery dresses, she wore a simple, high-necked gown with long sleeves that brushed her wrists, even though the Georgia evening was warm and close. I asked her to dance. A blush crept up her neck, but she placed her small, cool hand in mine. We moved slowly to a Sam Cooke song, and I felt her trembling, a fine vibration, like a plucked string. We only lasted one dance before she murmured an apology about being tired and retreated to her friends. But that was it for me. I was captivated, not just by her beauty, which was undeniable, but by that air of profound quiet, a fragility that made every protective instinct in my chest roar to life. Our courtship was a patient, gentle thing, straight out of another era. We'd sit on her mother's porch swing, a respectable 3 feet between us, talking for hours as fireflies blinked in the dusk. We'd walk through the park, her hand always gloved, her dresses always covering her from collarbone to ankle. I found it endearing, a mark of a modest, properly raised woman. In the sweltering heat of summer, when other women wore sundresses, Eleanor wore light cotton blouses with the sleeves neatly buttoned at the cuff. I never saw her elbows, not once. I thought it was just Eleanor, shy, reserved, beautifully old-fashioned. The fabric of her modesty became part of the fabric of my love for her. Have you ever loved someone's quirks so completely that you never stopped to question where they came from? That was me. I was so busy building the future in my mind that I never excavated the past. When I proposed a year later, kneeling in the azalea garden behind the radio station, she didn't cry out with joy. She grew very still, her face pale. She asked for time to think. It stung, I won't lie. I was a young man with a steady job, a man in love, and I couldn't fathom the hesitation. Now, of course, I understand. That pause wasn't about doubt of me. It was pure, undiluted terror. Terror of what came after I do. Terror of the wedding night. Terror that the carefully constructed wall of fabric and darkness would crumble, and I would see what lay beneath and walk away forever. She said yes. The wedding day was a blur of white lace and smiling faces. Her mother wept through the entire ceremony, great heaving sobs. At the time, I mistook it for a mother's joy. Now I know it was the weight of a guilt she carried to her grave. Our honeymoon was a small, cozy inn in Savannah. I was nervous, yes, but brimming with a hopeful, tender love. I had waited for this, for the moment when the last barrier between us would fall, and we would know each other completely, soul and skin. When we entered our room, I went to embrace her, to kiss her neck. She stiffened as if struck. "Jackson," she whispered, her voice thin with panic. Could you turn around for a moment?" Puzzled, I did. I heard the rustle of her bag, the soft click of the bathroom door closing. I waited and waited. The minutes stretched into a half hour, then an hour. I knocked gently. "Ellie? Darling, is everything all right?" "Just a moment," came her muffled reply. When she finally emerged, the room was pitch black. She had turned off every lamp, drawn the heavy curtains. I could barely make out her silhouette in the doorway, engulfed in a floor-length nightgown that looked more like a ceremonial robe, buttoned tight to her throat. "Honey," I said, softly, "let me turn on a light. I want to see my beautiful wife." A sob broke from her. "Please, no. Please, Jackson, I can't. I'm not ready. Please, just in the dark. It has to be in the dark." The raw desperation in her voice stopped me cold. This wasn't shyness. This was something akin to dread. My heart ached for her. "All right," I said, my voice gentle in the blackness. "Your way. Always your way." I promised myself that with time, with patience, with the safety of my love, she would learn to trust me. The light would come on. I promised myself the light would come on. It took 5 decades and a fall to finally switch it on. It never did. Not for 52 years. We returned to Augusta, to the little house I'd bought, and began our life. I worked my shifts at the station. Eleanor kept a home so immaculate it seemed to glow. She was a wonderful homemaker, her love expressed in perfectly folded laundry, in the scent of fresh bread, in the quiet order of our rooms. But the private geography of her body remained an uncharted, forbidden continent. Our intimacy existed only in a sealed chamber of darkness. It was hurried, furtive, a transaction of love conducted under the blanket of night, with layers of cloth between us. The bathroom door developed a ritualistic significance. The turn of the lock was a sound more definitive than any spoken word. She would disappear inside to bathe, to change, and emerge fully armored in her day dress or nightgown. Steam would seep from under the door, the ghost of a presence I was never allowed to witness. Once, early on, I walked towards the bathroom while she was showering, needing my razor. My hand brushed the doorknob. From within, a scream tore through the house, a raw, animal sound of pure terror. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. "Eleanor, it's just me. I'm sorry." She came out minutes later, white as parchment, trembling so violently she could barely hold her robe closed. "You must never come in when I'm there," she gasped, her eyes wide with a fear I couldn't comprehend. "I won't, I promise," I said, holding her. "I'm so sorry." But the question now had roots, digging deep into my mind. What could inspire such profound, visceral fear in the sanctuary of her own home, with her own husband just outside? Can you imagine that? Building a life, a family, a home with someone, yet a single door and a simple lock become the symbol of a divide you cannot cross? It breeds a special kind of loneliness, one you learn to breathe alongside the love. Children came, first Benjamin, then Clara, then our surprise, little Samuel. I thought motherhood would soften the edges of her fear, that the shared miracle of creation would make her body feel less like a secret and more like a testament. The opposite happened. She retreated further. Doctor's appointments were attended alone. Nursing was done under thick, stifling quilts, even in summer. She wore clothes so loose and voluminous, they seemed to swallow her whole. When I'd try to rub her aching back during a pregnancy, she'd flinch and pull away. "Jackson, don't," she'd say, her voice firm. "It's not proper." "Ellie, I'm your husband," I'd plead, feeling helpless. "And I am a mother now," she'd reply, as if that explained everything. "This is how I need to be." And so, I loved her. I loved our 3 boisterous, beautiful children who filled the house with noise and light. I loved the life we had built from the ground up. I loved the woman who was the steady, gentle heartbeat of our home. But I lived with a ghost of a question. The mystery of my wife's skin became the silent third partner in our marriage, a presence as constant as the furniture. The years stacked up like well-read books on a shelf. 5 years became 10, then 20, then 30. My hair went gray. The children grew, moved out, started lives of their own. The little house felt bigger, emptier, echoing with the memories of childhood laughter. Through it all, the ritual never changed. The locked door, the darkness, the covered body. I stopped asking. I suppose I accepted it. I told myself love wasn't about physical sight. It was about the soul, the shared history, the quiet companionship of growing old together. What did it matter if I never saw her? I knew her heart. But in the deepest part of the night, watching her sleep swaddled in high-necked flannel while a summer breeze tried to coax through the window, the old question would whisper again. "What is it? What hurt you so deeply that you've spent a lifetime building a fortress against my eyes?" I began to see it not as simple modesty, but as a pain she carried, a monumental, sculpting pain. I just never could have guessed its shape, its origin, or that it was literally etched into her, a brutal map of a journey she took alone when she was just a child. The grandchildren arrived, 4 bursts of chaotic joy. Eleanor was the quintessential grandmother, the maker of legendary peach pies, the weaver of fantastical stories, the patient solver of puzzles. The kids adored her. Yet, even with them, the rules held. "Grandma, come swim with us." They'd beg on blistering afternoons. "Oh, my darlings," she'd smile, waving from the shaded porch. "This old bones just wants to sit and watch you. I'll make lemonade." Our daughter-in-law once gently pointed out, "Jack, Mama Eleanor wears long sleeves in August. She must be so uncomfortable. Is she all right?" I'd just shrug and offer the same old hollow excuse. That's just her way. Always has been. But the excuse was wearing thin, even for me. The narrative had shifted over the decades. First, it was the shyness of a girl, then the changed body of a mother. Now it was the wrinkles of an old woman. "Jackson," she'd say softly if I ever hinted, "you don't want to see this old, sagging skin. Let me keep some mystery for you." And I would relent. Always. Because I did love her. Because after a lifetime, what difference did it really make? But then, a new, slower, more insidious thief began to visit our home. It started with misplaced keys, a repeated story, a forgotten ingredient in a recipe she'd made 1,000 times. We chalked it up to age, to the natural wear and tear of a brilliant mind. But the gaps widened. She'd stare at a grandson's face, searching for a name that danced just out of reach. She'd prepare a pot of coffee without adding water, the smell of burning metal jolting us from our routines. The doctor's visit was brief, his prognosis delivered to me in hushed tones in a sterile hallway. "Mr. Jackson, it's likely early-stage Alzheimer's. I'm sorry." The world tilted on its axis. The solid ground of our shared memories, the very foundation of us, was now sand slipping through her fingers. And as her mind began its slow retreat, a terrifying, inevitable truth began to dawn on me. The disease would not respect her secret. It would dismantle, brick by brick, the fortress she had spent a lifetime maintaining. The very routines of privacy, locking doors, remembering to dress, would become confusing, then impossible. The moment was coming when the divide would be forced closed, not by her choice, but by her need. And I, her husband, who had promised to love and cherish in sickness and in health, would finally have to step across the threshold I had respected for over half a century. What would you do if you knew a truth was coming, one your loved one had spent their entire life protecting you from? Would you dread it, or see it as a chance to finally share the burden? The diagnosis was a key turning in a lock, but it didn't open the door. Not yet. Instead, it changed the quality of the air in our home. A low, constant hum of vigilance replaced our easy quiet. I watched her, not with suspicion, but with a heartbreaking tenderness, as she navigated a world that grew more unfamiliar by the day. And I began to see, with startling clarity, how intricately her secret was woven into the very fabric of her being. It wasn't just a habit, it was a survival mechanism, as automatic as breathing. Alzheimer's is a cruel sculptor. It doesn't just erase memories, it reshapes personality, sanding down the polished edges of a lifetime until the raw, foundational core is exposed. And Eleanor's core was fear. A deep childhood fear that even this disease couldn't seem to touch. Her confusion manifested in small, poignant ways. She'd set the table for 4, for the children who were now grown with homes of their own. She'd look at me over breakfast and say, "Your voice, it's so familiar. Do I know you from the radio?" And my heart would clench. "Yes, Ellie," I'd say, taking her hand, "and from everywhere else, too." But through the fog, one directive remained crystal clear, shining with a desperate intensity: do not be seen. The bathroom door still locked, every time. If anything, her rituals became more prolonged, more fraught. I'd hear her in there, the shower running, then stopping, then running again, as if she'd forgotten she'd already washed. I'd hear soft, frustrated murmurs, sometimes tears. She'd emerge, having forgotten to dry off, her dress clinging to her or wearing 2 blouses, one over the other. The pride was still there, a fierce, stubborn pride. When I'd gently offer a towel or suggest a different outfit, she'd pull away, her eyes flashing with a lucid defiance that seemed to burn through the confusion. "I can manage, Jackson. I've always managed." And she had. For 52 years, she had managed the impossible, to share a life, a bed, a family, while keeping a part of herself in a solitary, dark quarantine. That will, that sheer force of self-concealment, was the strongest part of her. It was beginning to terrify me. The children saw it too. Our son Ben, a practical man, sat me down one evening after his mother had spent nearly 2 hours in the bathroom. "Dad, she can't be in there alone. What if she falls? What if she turns on the hot water and forgets to turn it off? This isn't about privacy anymore. It's about safety. I know, son. I sighed, the weight of it pressing down on my shoulders. But you don't understand. It's the one line she has always drawn. It's non-negotiable. Then negotiate, Clara said softly, her eyes wet. Something's going to give, Dad. Either her body or her secret. We can't let it be her body. I waited for a good day, a patch of clear sky in the gathering storm. Eleanor was sitting by the window, watching cardinals at the feeder, her hands calm in her lap. She seemed present, anchored. I pulled a chair close and took her hands in mine. Ellie, my love, I began, my voice as gentle as I could make it. We need to talk about the bathroom, about you bathing. I'm so afraid you'll get hurt in there, all alone. Let me help you. Let me be there with you. There's no shame in it. Not with me. Her response was instantaneous. The calm shattered. She snatched her hands back as if burned, her body coiling tight. The fear in her eyes wasn't confused or vague. It was the sharp, precise fear of a trapped child. No. The word was a gasp. You can't. You mustn't see. If you see, you'll look at me with disgust. You'll wish you'd never married me. You'll leave. Her voice dropped to a terrified whisper. I couldn't bear it. I'd rather fall. I'd rather die than have you look at me and see a monster. Monster. The word hung in the sunlit room, ugly and absolute. Where had that come from? What terrible mirror had she been looking into for 7 decades? Eleanor, I said, my own voice trembling. You are my wife. You are the mother of my children. You could never be a monster to me. Nothing on this earth could make me leave you. Nothing. But she was shaking her head, tears streaming down her lined cheeks. You don't know. You don't know what's there. Please, Jackson. Promise me. Promise you won't look. It's the last thing I'll ever ask of you. And what could I do? Faced with that raw historical terror, I promised, as I had always promised. I held her as she cried, this woman who was slowly disappearing, yet clung to this one, awful truth with a tenacity that defied the disease devouring her mind. She clung to her truth with a tenacity that defied the disease devouring her mind. Some shames are etched deeper than memory, but the universe, it seems, has its own timeline for truth. The small accidents began, a purple bruise blooming on her forearm from a stumble against the sink, a shallow cut on her thumb, a near miss where she'd grabbed the shower curtain to keep from falling. Each one was a crack in the dam. I was sleeping less, my ears perpetually tuned to the sounds from down the hall, my old bones aching with a constant nervous tension. And then, one afternoon when she was more absent than present, murmuring about needing to get home to her mother, she gave me a sliver of the past. It came out not as a confession, but as a disjointed fragment, a piece of a nightmare floating to the surface. Mama was at the river, she murmured, her gaze distant, fixed on some invisible point in our living room. The clothes, they had to be beaten on the rocks. He came in. He was so loud. The pot was boiling. For his coffee. It was always for his coffee. I knelt beside her chair. Who came in, sweetheart? Her eyes flickered to mine, cloudy with the effort of recall. Him. The man with the thunder in his face. I was only little. My hands, they shook so bad. The grits, I forgot the salt. A single tear tracked down her cheek. He said I was useless. He said he'd teach me. My blood ran cold. Teach you what, Ellie? But the moment passed. Her face went blank, smooth. She patted my hand. Would you like some tea, young man? That night, I couldn't sleep. The fragments swirled. A man, a pot, grits, salt, a lesson. I pictured a little girl, a version of Eleanor with solemn eyes, in a kitchen. A sense of dreadful violence permeated the vague story. Was this it? Was this the root? Some childhood punishment? A burn from a stove? It seemed both too simple and horrifying enough to forge a lifetime of shame. The balance was tipping. Her lucid moments were islands in a rising sea of confusion, and on those islands, her only focus was maintaining the secret. She'd fumble with the buttons on her dress, growing frantic if I entered the room. "Turn around, Jackson. Don't look." She'd cry, her voice high with a panic that belonged to another era. The final push came from an unexpected direction. Her own body, betraying the meticulous control she had demanded of it for so long. It began with a urinary tract infection, a common but dangerous thing for someone in her state. She couldn't articulate the pain, only grew more agitated and withdrawn. The doctor was firm. "She needs help with personal hygiene. Mr. Jackson. Proper cleaning, frequent changes. It's essential. You can't let modesty risk her health." It was the permission I didn't want, but knew I needed. The medical necessity became the battering ram against the fortress door. I tried once more, armed with the doctor's words. "Ellie, the doctor says I need to help you stay clean. It's to keep you from getting sick. Please, let me help you take a bath." She stared at me, and in her eyes I saw the last stand of a weary general. The fear was still there, but beneath it, a new terrifying emotion. A dawning realization that she was losing the fight. Her body, her mind, were no longer allies in her lifelong mission of concealment. She didn't agree, but she didn't fight as vehemently. It was a silent, crushing surrender. I prepared the bathroom the next morning, my hands unsteady. I laid out soft towels, her favorite lavender soap. The room felt like a stage set for a scene I wasn't ready to perform. I led her in, her steps slow and shuffling. She stood in the middle of the room, staring at the filled tub, looking small and utterly lost. I'll do it," she whispered, not meeting my eyes. "I'll be right outside the door," I said, my heart breaking. "I'll just be here. You call if you need me." I left the door ajar, a compromise, a crack in the edifice. I sat on the floor in the hallway, my back against the wall, listening. I heard the rustle of cloth, the slow, careful movements, then a long silence, then a soft, broken sound that took me a moment to recognize. She was weeping. Not the frustrated tears of confusion, but the deep, grief-stricken sobs of someone mourning the last vestige of her control, saying goodbye to the secret that had defined her. I couldn't stay away. I pushed the door open slowly. She was sitting on the closed toilet lid, still fully dressed, her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. "Ellie," I murmured. She looked up, her face ravaged by tears and shame. "I can't," she choked out. "I can't do it, Jackson. I'm so afraid." It was the purest confession she had ever offered, not of the secret itself, but of the terror that powered it. In that moment, I didn't care about the secret anymore. I only cared about her. "Then let's not," I said softly. "Not today. We'll just wash your face and hands, okay? Like the old days." And that's what we did. I knelt before her with a warm washcloth and tenderly cleaned her face, her hands, her neck. She watched me, her sobs subsiding into hiccups, her eyes studying my face for any flicker of revulsion. There was none. There couldn't be. That small, shared act was a turning point. It was the first time I had touched her with care in a private space, without the cover of darkness, A crack of light had entered the sacred locked room, but the core of the mystery, the why of her terror, remained shrouded. I had the feeling, heavy as a stone in my gut, that the full truth wouldn't emerge in a gentle moment like this. It would take a crisis to tear it fully into the light. Have you ever had that feeling? That a truth is hovering just out of sight, and you know its reveal will be painful, but the not knowing has become a heavier burden? That's where I was, caught between dread and a desperate need to finally understand the woman I loved. The crisis came on a Tuesday, a perfectly ordinary sunny Tuesday. She had been quiet all morning, compliant as I helped her dress. After a light lunch, she announced, clearly and lucidly, I would like to take a proper bath now. My head snapped up. It was the clearest sentence she'd spoken in weeks. There was a strange resolve in her eyes. It was as if, on some deep level, she had decided to face her Goliath. Or perhaps she simply wanted to reclaim one last piece of normalcy. Are you sure, my love? I asked. She nodded, once, firmly. Yes, I am sure. With trepidation knotting my stomach, I ran the water, tested the temperature. I helped her to the bathroom doorway. She paused, looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw not my elderly, confused wife, but the young, terrified woman from our honeymoon. Wait outside, she said, her voice quiet but clear. I nodded. I'll be right here. She closed the door. Not all the way. She left it open the width of my hand, a monumental, silent gift, a sign of fragile, hard-won trust. I heard the water slosh as she got in. I heard her sigh. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of water. I leaned against the wall, allowing myself a sliver of hope. Maybe this was the beginning. Maybe the wall was coming down, brick by brick. Then I heard it, a sharp, wet smack. The sound of flesh and bone meeting unforgiving, ceramic. Then a deafening, eternal silence. My name wasn't in it. There was no cry, just that terrible final sound, and then the void. Eleanor, no answer. The world narrowed to that partly open door. The trust she had offered now framed my nightmare. I didn't have to break it down. I simply pushed. And there she was, my wife, on the white tile floor curled on her side, the water from the tub still cascading around her. And for the first time in 52 years, she was not hidden. The light from the window fell directly across her, illuminating what she had spent a lifetime, and ultimately her last moments of clarity, trying to shield from me. It wasn't her age. It wasn't the gentle sagging of motherhood or the soft map of wrinkles earned by time. It was a landscape of ruin. From the sharp wings of her shoulder blades down to the dip of her waist, her skin was a tortured terrain of thick, ropey scars, purple, deep, twisted welts of flesh that looked like molten wax that had cooled into grotesque, hardened waves. It was a violence made permanent, a fossilized scream etched into her very being. The burns were so severe, so all-encompassing, they told a story of unimaginable pain inflicted on a small, helpless frame. My breath left my body. The word monster echoed in my head, and I finally understood. She hadn't been hiding a body she thought was ugly. She had been hiding a crime scene. Time stopped in that sunlit bathroom. The world shrank to the sterile white tiles, the still running water, and the horrific, beautiful truth laid bare before me. My wife, my Eleanor, was a tapestry of survival, and I had been blind to the pattern for over half a century. Shock held me rigid for only a second. Then, the husband in me overpowered the stunned witness. She was hurt, she was exposed, and she was conscious, her eyes wide with a terror far greater than any pain from the fall. No, 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 no. She whimpered, trying to curl in on herself to hide the scarred canvas of her back from my gaze. Don't look. Please, Jackson. Close your eyes. Go away. Her voice, so small and broken, shattered my paralysis. I moved, not with revulsion, but with a tenderness that felt like it was breaking me open. Shh, my love. Shh. I'm here. I grabbed the largest, softest towel from the rack and knelt beside her, carefully draping it over her body, making sure the fabric covered the scars before I touched her. You're covered, Ellie. You're safe. Let me help you up. She was trembling violently, but she stopped resisting. The fight had finally gone out of her, replaced by a profound, weary surrender. She let me lift her, a frail, damp weight in my arms. I carried her to our bed and laid her on her stomach, the only position that seemed bearable. I fetched ice for the blossoming bruise on her hip, my own hands steady now with purpose. We stayed like that, in a heavy silence, for a long time. The secret was out, lying between us as tangible as another person in the room. The 52-year-old wall was dust. There was only the aftermath. What do you say when you discover the person you love has been living with a private war you never knew was raging? You don't speak, you listen. And that's what I did. Her face was buried in the pillow, but her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I placed a hand gently between her shoulder blades, right on the raised, ruined skin beneath the towel. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Eleanor, I said, my voice thick. My darling girl, what happened to you? It was the question I'd carried since our honeymoon, now finally asked aloud in the full light of day. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, a ragged breath. I was 7, she whispered, the words muffled by the pillow. In a little house near the Alabama line. My daddy, my real daddy, was gone. Mama took up with a man. He drank the thunder. The story came then, not in a flood, but in fractured, painful pieces, as if she were picking up shards of a broken vase, each one cutting her anew. She spoke of a childhood lived in the shadow of a man's rage, of a mother who tried to be a buffer but was too worn down by life to be a shield, of walking on floors that felt like they were made of eggshells. Then she came to the day the shadow ate her whole. Mama was at the creek. He came home. His eyes were red. He told me to make his lunch. Grits. Her voice was a thin thread. I was so small. The stove was so big. I made them. I brought the plate to him, she shuddered, a full-body convulsion. He took one bite, spat it out, said I was a useless, stupid child, said I'd wasted his food. I held her hand, my thumb stroking her papery skin, offering an anchor in the memory. He threw the plate. It smashed. Then he stood up. Her breath hitched. He went to the stove. There was a pot. The water was rolling, boiling for his coffee. He picked it up. I knew what he meant to do. I ran. But he was so fast. He caught me by my pinafore, spun me around. She stopped. The memory was too vivid, too violent to voice. The unspoken action hung in the air, the searing pour of boiling water down a little girl's back, the sizzle of skin, the agony so vast it swallowed sound, the man leaving, the mother finding her, the months of hospital torment, of bandages sticking to raw flesh, of being the burned girl, the monster. When I came home, she continued, her voice hollow, the kids they saw once in the schoolhouse. They screamed. They called me a creature. My stepfather had said it first, but they made it true. I learned to hide. I built a cage of cloth and darkness, and I lived in it. I thought I would die in it. Then I met you. She turned her head to look at me then, her eyes pools of ancient shame. You were sunlight, Jackson. You were kind, and I was so terrified that my sunlight would see the marks and turn away, that you'd see the monster and not the girl. So I made a choice. I would have your love in the dark, for as long as it lasted, rather than risk seeing your love turn to pity or disgust in the light. Every locked door, every darkened room, it was my price. The price to be loved by you, the magnitude of it crashed over me. Not just the physical torture of a child, but the lifelong psychological prison she had built from its aftermath. Her entire identity as my wife, as a mother, had been constructed on the foundation of that hidden shame. She had believed, with every fiber of her being, that her value was conditional on my ignorance. Tears streamed down my face freely now, not for the horror of the story, but for the sheer, staggering weight of the loneliness she had endured. All that time, I had felt shut out, when in reality, she had been the one in solitary confinement. Oh, my brave, brave Eleanor. I choked out. I leaned down, my lips close to her ear. Look at me. She did. Do you hear me? You are not a monster. You never were. That word belongs to the man who did this. It doesn't belong to you. You are a survivor. You are a warrior. These, I gently touched the towel over her scars. These aren't marks of shame. They are medals. Proof that you endured hell and still chose to love. That you built a beautiful life. That you won. She searched my face, looking for the lie, the flicker of disgust. She found none. She saw only love, amplified by an understanding so deep it ached. A broken sound escaped her, and then the dam truly broke. She wept, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from the soles of her feet. She wept for the 7-year-old girl who was betrayed. She wept for the teenager who believed she was unlovable. She wept for the young bride, living in fear. She wept out 52 years of coiled terror, and I held her through all of it, whispering my love, my awe, my gratitude for her into her hair. She wept out 52 years of coiled terror. I held her, whispering my awe for the warrior in my arms. That day marked the true beginning of the end of our old life and the start of our final, most honest chapter. The disease continued its inexorable march, but something fundamental had shifted. The haunted, guarded look in her eyes began to soften. She was lighter, as if she had put down a burden she'd been carrying since childhood. Caring for her became an act of sacred communion. Bathing her, applying lotion to her scarred back, dressing her, these were no longer forbidden acts, but rituals of love. Every time, I would kiss her back, right on the most raised, twisted scar. My warrior's marks, I'd say. And sometimes, in her moments of clarity, she would smile. A real, unburdened smile. I called our children home. I sat them down and told them their mother's story. I told them of the little girl, the pot, the lifelong secret. They listened in stunned, heartbroken silence. Then, one by one, they went to her. They asked to see. With her permission, I showed them her back. There were no gasps of horror, only tears of reverence. Our daughter, Clara, leaned down and kissed a scar. My brave, beautiful mama, she whispered. Our sons followed, each placing a kiss on her ravaged skin, anointing her not as a victim, but as a hero. In that moment, the last vestige of her shame was burned away not by heat, but by pure, unconditional love. As Alzheimer's tightened its grip, she forgot many things. She forgot our children's names, forgot the grandkids, forgot what year it was. But in her most lucid flickers, she remembered one thing. Jackson, she'd say, her eyes cloudy. Yes, my love, you stayed. Always. You saw and you stayed. I saw, I'd say, kissing her forehead. And I loved you more. One golden afternoon, sitting in a patch of sun on the porch, she had a moment of stunning clarity. She took my gnarled hand in her thin one. Thank you, she said, her voice clear as a bell, for not letting go, for loving all of me. He said the marks made me a monster, but you made them a love story. She passed a few weeks later, in her sleep, on a quiet dawn. I was beside her, holding her hand. The children and grandchildren were there, a circle of love around the bed. There was no fear on her face, only peace. The monster had been vanquished long before her last breath. She died a warrior, believed and beloved. The funeral was a celebration of the life everyone saw. The devoted mother, the wonderful grandmother, the steadfast wife. As I looked at her, finally at rest, I thought, if they only knew the battles you fought before you even met me, they would know you were the strongest of us all. So, why share this with you? Why open such a private, painful chapter of my life? Because I know many of you are carrying your own secrets, your own scars, visible or not. You're hiding parts of yourself, convinced they make you unworthy of love. Eleanor's story proves that's a lie. True love isn't sight, it's vision. It sees in the dark, and when the light finally comes, it doesn't flinch from the scars. It recognizes them for what they are, evidence of a battle fought, proof of a spirit that refused to be broken. Love isn't about perfection. It's about saying, I see your history, I honor your pain, and I choose you, all of you anyway. My Eleanor spent a lifetime afraid the light would kill our love. Instead, when it finally shone, it was the light that set us both free. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of the depth of real love, do me a kindness. Please, hit the like button. It lets me know these stories matter. And if you want to join me for more journeys into the heart of what makes us human, subscribe to Jackson Stories. I share a new piece of life every single day. Now, I'd love to hear from you. This channel is built on connection, so in the comments, tell me, have you ever kept a part of yourself hidden, fearing it would change how someone loved you? Or have you been the one to offer love when a hidden truth came to light? Let's talk about it down below. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Remember, your scars don't define you. How you love and allow yourself to be loved does. Until next time, friends.